car companies began to argue that the mandate was too strict.
We had to help with the regulations. The regulatory people knew nothing about this stuff. And we began to get the eerie feeling that we were going over a cliff. It wasn't going to be possible.
California was faced with the prospect of what do you do if the car companies don't comply? And so rather than do brinksmanship about what would happen if they didn't comply and stick with it, they started negotiating, certain flexibility in the mandate.
California compromised with the automakers, adopting a memorandum of agreement.
One of the agreements with the state was that the automakers would build and market electric vehicles in accordance with demand.
If they didn't want to build more of them, the car companies would have to make the case that there was no demand.
The person will go unnamed, but we were having a lunch in the executive dining room at the GM Tech Center one day, and just the two of us, and he leans over to me and he says, "Dobbles, you know something? You're my worst enemy." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, I'm out there lobbying to show that there's no demand for electric vehicles, and you're out there proving me wrong."
We would sit down with Hal Riney or with executives from GM and make, how far, how fast, how much. These are the three questions we're getting. Please put it in the advertising. It's not rocket science. And they would go back and do the exact opposite.
We never saw a TV ad with an electric car scampering up the side of a hill with a good-looking man or woman draped around it. That's the way they sell cars.
How does it go without gas and air? How does it go without sparks and explosions? How does it go without gears or transmissions? How does it go, you will ask yourself. And then you will ask, how did we go so long without it? The electric car, it isn't coming. It's here.
What was the objective of these advertisements? Was it to entice consumers or to scare them away?
Our goal at GM was to make the full-functioning battery electric vehicle a commercially viable business opportunity for General Motors.
GM spokesman Dave Barthmus has worked for GM for nearly 10 years.
We spent in excess of $1 billion to drive this market, to build the market. That means award-winning advertising, developing the vehicle, developing the recharging infrastructure. And in a 4-year time frame, from roughly 1996 to 2000, we were able to lease 800 EV1s.
So we started this waiting list in order to prove demand to GM, but no matter how many people we got on that list, it was never considered enough demand. Everything was anecdotal to GM. Only recently did they finally admit that there actually was a waiting list and tried to explain it away. By the time we explained all the limitations of the car to them, only 50 would sign up.
Flog them often. They need to do better.
For the regulation, we felt needed to be changed drastically. And there was some movement that way, but it didn't go away.
While the car companies fought the mandate in Sacramento, GM quietly closed its EV1 assembly line and began laying off its sales force.
All of a sudden, we were not only taken off the project, but taken out of the company. They started with the ones with the biggest waiting list and the most customers, and the primary areas were the ones that they dismantled first. And so at the end of 2001, that was it in terms of my employment with General Motors.
Studying General Motors practices over the years, and I don't speak for the engineers and scientists who would really have liked to have done a better job with motor vehicle technology, but the executives at the top, their motto seemed to have been going backwards into the future. There's all kinds of ways that they can bring politicians to their knees. Once the auto companies get a long lead time, then they go to work, eroding, and then when the deadline is approaching, you say we can't do it, and there are going to be terrible consequences.
Automakers took the fight to a new level. They sued California's Air Resources Board. GM led the lawsuit, soon joined by Chrysler and several auto dealerships. As California withered under the pressure, the car makers found a powerful new ally, the federal government. Shortly after joining the suit, the Bush administration made another announcement.
Tonight, I'm proposing $1.2 billion in research funding so that America can lead the world in developing clean, hydrogen-powered automobiles.
The federal government joined the car and oil industries to embrace a new clean car of the future. With more than $1 billion federal dollars up for grabs, over the next few years, the campaign for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles began to sway California.
Hello there, and welcome to the California Fuel Cell Partnership, where we're fueling the future in a new and environmentally friendly way. Automakers, energy and technology providers, along with government agencies, are voluntarily working together to commercialize the fuel cell for cars and buses. Soon you may see some of these cars cruising through your very own neighborhood.
We will not just dream about the hydrogen fueling stations. We will not just dream about the hydrogen cars. We will build it.
The hydrogen Hummer is not a production vehicle, it's a concept vehicle. It's a way for Governor Schwarzenegger to have a property at various events that he goes to when he unveils a new hydrogen refueling station at LAX, for example.
I'm going to encourage the building of a hydrogen highway to take us to the environmental future.
While hydrogen fuel cells offered an exciting alternative sometime in the future, what would happen to the technology of today? What would happen to the electric car? It all came down to a decisive meeting at California's Air Resources Board. Citizens and industry alike testified as CARB prepared to vote on the fate of the electric car.
This is a tough program. It's a revolutionary program. It pushes the automakers hard, and they don't like it, and they push back hard. And as you deliberate today on the fate of this program, I urge you to summon all of your political courage to make the hard choices that you know you need to make on this program. Because when it comes to protecting the health of the people of California, there are simply no more easy choices to make.
I saw this as losing this wonderful opportunity that we had really invested a great deal in the infrastructure, in the technology. It was like the rug was pulled out.
They gave it away. And to me, that's just sad. It's a sad commentary on the way our society and our system in the United States works.
When GM introduced the EV1, California was setting the toughest auto pollution standards in the nation. 10% of all cars sold here this year were to be zero-emission vehicles. But California dropped those standards after being sued by automakers.
But a lot of the vehicles, the Honda vehicles, the General Motors vehicles, were all leased, and nobody had the option to buy. So the automakers took advantage of that and pulled all the cars off the road. They weren't willing to let people take the cars and actually drive them and keep driving them like normal cars.
I tell you, when I noticed that GM was losing interest was when I wanted to release my car, and they wouldn't let me.
I've never had a product I've had to beg and fight and cajole and persist so much to get, and then had to try and beg and fight and find any way possible to try and keep.
Well, they
did not give the option.
They didn't give me an option to buy. They said, "Thank you for leasing the car.
Turn
Bye-bye.
it in now. Turn it in by such and such a date, or you're going to be held liable."
GM had very quietly gone about taking cars back without anybody saying very much, other than some of the drivers that complained about having their cars taken away, but never in a big organized fashion. So they had no choice but to turn them in, or face the legal consequences of basically stealing a car. To my knowledge, all the cars were turned in because people had too much to lose. To this day, the automakers have fought anyone actually understanding how much demand there was and how much demand that there is.